Back in the day, me and my buddies used to check out the deep web sometimes. We were all into computers, and it was like exploring the wild west of the internet. One day, I was on there alone, just hanging out in a chat room. It was kind of fun, watching people chat about all sorts of stuff. But then things took a weird turn. One user in the chat started calling me out, saying he was going to come after me. At first, I thought he was just messing around, so I shot back with some smart remarks. But he got really mad and started saying some nasty stuff. Feeling uneasy, I decided to bail and logged off. About 10 minutes later, I got a text from an unknown number asking why I left. It gave me the creeps, but I figured it was just some hacker trying to spook me. I ignored it and hoped it wouldn't happen again, even though I was kind of scared. A couple of hours later, my phone rang. It was another unknown number. I answered, but there was just heavy breathing on the other end. I hung up, but it gave me the heebie-jeebies. Then, I noticed a car parked outside my house. I couldn't see who it was, but it freaked me out. The car stayed there for hours, not moving an inch. I tried to brush it off and go to bed, but I was on edge. I made sure all the windows were covered and the doors were locked before I finally managed to fall asleep. The next morning, I checked to see if the car was still there. Thankfully, it was gone. But when I turned on my computer, I found a bunch of photos open. They were of my house, my car, and even one of me sleeping. It looked like it was taken from inside my house. I was terrified. I checked the whole house, but there was no one there. The front door was unlocked, though, which freaked me out even more. I must have slept like a log, because whoever it was didn't wake me up. For the next few days, I was paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder and peeking out the window. Everything seemed okay, until one night I heard a noise in my room. I saw a figure walk past my door and bolted upright. I called the cops right away, and I heard the person leaving as I was on the phone. I felt dumb for not calling the cops sooner, but I was too scared to think straight. They showed up and took my statement, promising to keep an eye on things. After that, I swore off the deep web for good. It just wasn't worth the risk. I learned my lesson the hard way, but at least nothing worse happened. It's better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to the internet's dark side. A few years back when I was in high school, my buddies and I got to chatting about this thing called the deep web. My friend George knew a bit about it, and he was telling us all sorts of wild stuff. We talked about it the whole lunch period, and I gotta admit, I was curious. When I got home, that curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to give the deep web a shot. I texted George, and he gave me the lowdown on what browser to use and how to get on. Following his instructions, I managed to log in. I searched for some deep web sites to check out, and the first one I clicked on was pretty weird. It was just a black screen with a tiny icon in the corner. When I clicked it, I ended up on a page full of random images, no explanation or anything. There were animals, like fish and bears, and a bunch of other random stuff. I clicked on the fish picture, and the page started loading. It took forever, maybe like 30 seconds or so. When it finally loaded, I nearly jumped out of my skin. There, on the screen, was my face. It was coming from my webcam. I panicked and grabbed a blanket from my bed to cover the webcam. As soon as I did, the screen went black. I let out a sigh of relief, but then some text started appearing on the screen. At first, it just said my name, but not just my first name, my full name, first, middle, and last. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then, it started listing more personal info about me. My school, my phone number, even the state and city I lived in. I was freaking out, trying to close out of the page, but nothing was working. My mouse was frozen. I started to panic, hitting random keys on my keyboard, but nothing changed. I even tried to turn off my monitor, but that didn't work either. Finally, I went to unplug my computer from the wall and everything shut down. I sat there in shock for a while before plugging it back in to delete the browser. Thankfully, I'd been planning to get a new computer anyway, so I got one shortly after. But that experience with the deep web, it's something I'll never forget. This incident took place just a few years back. After graduating with my science degree, I eagerly set out to find a job in my field, specifically in the realm of nutrition. However, the job market was tough, especially with the pandemic adding an extra layer of difficulty to the process. Despite the challenges, I remained determined to secure a position that aligned with my education and interests. It was during this time of uncertainty that I stumbled upon a job opening at a company specializing in research and development. Despite coming across some negative reviews about the company's pay and working conditions on job-seeking websites, I decided to apply. To my surprise, I received an offer for the position of a lab technician merely 2 weeks after submitting my application. Excited to kickstart my career, I eagerly accepted the job offer, brushing off the negative reviews as potential exaggerations or isolated incidents. My responsibilities as a lab technician primarily involved conducting various tests and inspections on raw materials, as well as supporting experiments and trials within the laboratory setting. Most days, I found myself engrossed in my work within the confines of the lab, occasionally stepping out to perform calibration checks or equipment maintenance as needed. However, it wasn't long before strange occurrences began to unfold, casting a shadow of unease over my otherwise routine workdays. One fateful afternoon, as I awaited the completion of a laboratory test, I succumbed to the exhaustion that had plagued my sleep schedule since the onset of the pandemic. As I drifted into a drowsy state, I heard the faint sound of someone entering the lab. Assuming it to be one of the interns or fellow employees, I paid little attention to the newcomer's presence until I heard the distinct sound of someone tampering with the incubator. Curiosity piqued. I glanced up, only to be met with a sight that defied all logic. A pair of legs resembling a fish's tail, standing upright like a character from an animated film. Shocked and bewildered, I questioned the validity of my senses, wondering if sleep deprivation had induced hallucinations. Yet, the image remained etched in my mind, leaving me with an unsettling sense of disquietude that lingered long after the incident had passed. Despite my best efforts to rationalize the encounter, the feeling of unease persisted, intensifying with each passing day. It wasn't until weeks later, during a routine inspection of the company's stored materials, that my apprehensions were reignited. Upon entering the storage area, a palpable sense of foreboding hung in the air, sending shivers down my spine. As I went about my duties, I was suddenly jolted by the blaring of alarms emanating from a nearby storeroom. Rushing to investigate, I was met with a scene straight out of a nightmare, dry goods ravaged and contaminated, as if by some unseen force. The sight sent a chill down my spine, prompting unsettling questions to swirl in my mind. What could have caused such destruction? And more importantly, was there something lurking within the confines of the laboratory, something beyond rational comprehension? As the days passed, my fears only escalated, culminating in a series of inexplicable encounters that defied all logical explanation. From mysterious movements in the periphery of my vision to sightings of the enigmatic fish-like appendages, each incident served as a haunting reminder of the unsettling presence that lurked within the shadows of the lab. Despite the overwhelming urge to confide in my colleagues or superiors, I hesitated, fearing ridicule or dismissal of my claims. Instead, I chose to grapple with my fears in solitude, navigating the eerie corridors of the laboratory with trepidation and uncertainty. And so, as I continue to navigate the murky waters of my job, haunted by the specter of the unknown, I can't help but wonder, what other secrets lie concealed within the labyrinthine depths of the laboratory, waiting to be unearthed? I'm 15 years old and really into computers. I like building them and exploring the dark parts of the internet, like the deep web. It's kind of a hobby of mine to find weird and wacky websites on there. Most of the sites I come across are pretty boring. Conspiracy theories, hate groups, that kind of thing. But every now and then, I'll stumble upon something really strange and interesting. Like a place where you can buy serial killer memorabilia, or a cult that worships some weird wolf creature. One day I was browsing the deep web and I found a site called Parent Snatcher. It didn't look like a typical deep website, more like someone's personal blog. But I was curious, so I checked it out. The site had a bunch of listings for parents you could buy. Mothers, fathers, all with prices and descriptions. It was really weird. I tried to figure out if it was some kind of code or hidden message, but after a while, I found a message welcoming me to Parent Snatcher. Apparently, this was a place where you could buy replacement parents. They said they'd monitor the bonding process and even put tracking chips in the parents to make sure they couldn't escape. At first, I thought it was all a big joke, but then I started to wonder, what if it was real? I've always wanted a dad, and the idea of getting a new one was kind of tempting, even though I knew it was probably dangerous and illegal. After a lot of debating, I decided to tell my mom about the site. She was horrified and called the cops. They started investigating, but the website disappeared before they could track it down. That's when things got really scary. One night I was sitting at my computer when I heard a loud bang at the front door. I grabbed my baseball bat, ready to fight off a burglar. But when my bedroom door opened, it was a man in a ski mask. He demanded to know if I was the one who had placed an order on Parent Snatcher. I was so scared, but I managed to break free and run downstairs screaming for my mom. She came rushing down and started beating the guy up. We were able to scare him off, but it was a really close call. The police stepped up patrols in our neighborhood and installed a new security system, but they never found the people behind Parent Snatcher. I guess they were some kinds of child trafficking ring, and they were trying to kidnap me. I learned a really hard lesson that day. The deep web is no joke. There are some really dangerous people out there just waiting to take advantage of curious kids like me. I'll never go back there again, and I'm so grateful to have my mom to protect me. This whole experience has made me a lot more careful about what I do online. I know now that the deep web is not just a place for finding weird and quirky websites. It can be a gateway to some really messed up and illegal stuff. I'm just glad I got out of it alive.